welcome back, everyone, to another episode, or another interview, I should say, of Off the Cuff. With me today is a very special guest, Beyond Comics, aka Liam. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Lucas. It's the Saturday morning here, and I can't think
Oh,
of a better way to spend it than talking about comics. So, yeah,
awesome.
good
I'm
way to
glad to
start the
hear it.
weekend.
I'm glad to hear it. It's just it's Friday evening here, so that's funny. I forgot you're already in the next day. So
Yeah,
um
living in the future.
yeah, essentially, yeah. Um So, what have you, well, actually, before we begin, let me jump to the chat here real quick. We have James Able to Infinity and Beyond. Absolutely. Hope you're doing well, James. Um, Before we really dive in, you mentioned to me earlier that you have a bit of a haul that you wanted to
I
share.
do.
I would love to see a good haul.
Okay, so first one I've got is this guy, Crocodile Black. It's a
Awesome.
Philip Kennedy Johnson book with art by Som. I actually read this one just last night.
Okay,
And
wow.
Yeah, it's like a psychological crime thriller, I guess I would describe it as.
Okay.
Um, and I really liked it. It's about this guy who goes through something traumatic, which I won't spoil. And he gets these hallucinations, and it's set during COVID times, so it did feel a little dated. Um, but he
Interesting. Okay.
basically goes to do a food delivery during COVID time and finds a dead body, and that basically leads him down a rabbit hole. I don't think I want to say any more than that because I think it's a good one to go in blind. But if you like crime stuff, if you like psychological thrillers, that's a
What was that one called again?
it's called Crocodile Black. It just came out, the trade, I believe.
Okay, awesome. Let me jot that
Yeah.
down. Yeah, that seems interesting. I do like crime, comics a lot.
Yeah, and I like what Som does with the art in it because the character has hallucinations. They do some pretty creative stuff with that.
Interesting,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and Philip Kennedy Johnson hasn't done a lot of independent stuff lately.
Mhm.
So I was excited to check that out because I do like
Awesome.
some of his independent work. Then we've got a deluxe Legion of Superheroes Great Darkness Saga.
Nice.
Um, this is a corner of the DC universe that I'm not super familiar with. This book has been out of print for years, so I was super stoked that that got a reprint. Got Flash by Grant Morrison Deluxe.
Okay, awesome.
Looking forward to jumping into that as well. I've heard great things. And this one, oh man, I've been waiting to read this for so long. Have you read Far Sector?
I have not, and it's funny, the 2 that you, showed that I wanted to touch on was The Flash and now Far Sector, because I watched Illuminati's video today. He did a February haul, so shout out to Illuminati. Check, his channel out if you guys have not already, and he had both those books on the haul. So, Far Sector seemed really interesting. I don't know much about it, but from what he was saying, I'm like, okay, I think I might dig that quite a bit. So, have you read it yet?
I haven't.
Okay.
I've been waiting because as soon as I see any well received 12 issue series from DC, I just put my hopes up for a deluxe because they are pretty
Yeah.
good with their releases. Like over the last few years, I know they have a bit of a bad rap sometimes, but I think they've been doing a great job with what they've been putting out. And I almost gave in and just read it digitally. And I think like that day they announced that they were doing the deluxe, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll hold off." So I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. I'm really looking forward to reading that. I've only heard amazing things. And Jamal Campbell, I don't know if you've seen much of his art, but
No, I haven't.
it's great. And then the last book, best for last, I got this
Oh
bad
my
boy.
let me, highlight you here. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
That is
Um,
awesome.
Mr. Miracle, Absolute. Yeah, I've wanted that in Absolute for so long. I upgraded my Deluxe, which I already loved.
Nice.
But it was so well designed, and I don't get a lot of books in Absolute. I think this is maybe my like ninth ish or something. I have a few, but I don't buy a ton. But
Sure.
definitely have that one in a nice big format.
You had a pretty nice haul there. That's awesome. Yeah, you'll have to let me know how Far Sector is. I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll definitely make a
I
post.
I don't know if I'll buy the deluxe. I might, unless you like rave about the deluxe and say you need to buy this deluxe over the trade paperback. I might just go with the trade paperback. Um, but yeah, interesting. Okay. I'm sure that will get an absolute eventually too. Far Sector. I bet
I
that
think
will.
you're right. I know a lot of people want it
Yeah.
in Absolute as well, so it's a
That
good
I hear a
sign
lot of
for it.
buzz about that in Absolute, and then also Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which I
Mm,
might buy that Absolute because I do own the trade paperback. I love it, and I probably would upgrade to the Absolute just because I really do like that story, and the artwork I think is just gorgeous in that.
yeah.
Awesome,
I
yeah, sweet haul, dude.
I got the deluxe for Supergirl as well.
Okay,
But I don't know if I would upgrade that one because I feel like I'm going to go down the rabbit hole of upgrading every single Tom King maxi series.
that's fair.
Because like he's got like, have you read the Strange Adventures as well?
I've not. I that's one I've been meaning to check out now for a while too. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it up there with Mr. Miracle and Supergirl, but it's very close. It's still incredible.
Okay, gotcha. Have you read? I think it's by Tom King and art by Greg Smallwood. I think that's his name. The Human Target.
I haven't, but Greg Smallwood's art in that is beautiful.
It
I've seen
is.
it.
Yeah,
I do need to read that. Yeah. Have you?
I was reading that in single issues when I was still collecting single issues. I was working at a comic shop actually at the time, and I saw it was just a blind buy. I saw the first issue and the cover. I'm like, that seems cool. I want to buy that. Um, I actually didn't love the story. I thought it was like way too it was way too complicated in my opinion. But I haven't finished it yet. So maybe if I reread it, it might hit a little differently, I guess. Um, I bet we might get an absolute of that too. I feel like Tom King, his work is a lot of his work. I think we can anticipate absolutes for here. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
let's jump to the chat real quick before we dive into more. Kane is here. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Kane. I hope you're doing well.
What's up,
James
Kane?
Abel adds, you can also read Crocodile Black on Global Comics. I do not have Global Comics. Um, the only I have Comixology, or I did for a very long time, and I did like Comixology quite a bit. Um, but I do like reading physical books, and so I don't know. I just haven't read too much digital comics recently, so I don't know if I'll check it out there, but I might buy it. It does seem like something I'd enjoy for sure.
When
Um,
you read digitally, what do you read on?
so I have an iPad. I don't know what like generation it is or whatever, but um, it was cheap. It was a cheaper one. It was like $200, I think. It might have been on sale too at the time. Um, but it works. I don't have any problems with it. I have it right here actually, and yeah, I use it to draw on, take notes, and then sometimes read, and that's really it. But for those purposes, I like it quite a bit, to be honest. So, do you read digitally at all?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I have an old. It's quite old now. It's a struggle to find a case for it and whatnot, but it's one of the old iPad Pros, the big 12.9-inch ones.
Okay.
So it's got a huge screen on it. And I like reading digital if it's more modern comics.
Sure.
But if you're reading like stuff from the 80s or before, to me, I don't know. There's just something about it. I don't know. I prefer to
That's
read
fair.
those physically, definitely.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like modern comics, um, they do look better on, a digital format. Even if they're not made for digital format, it does translate a bit better. I will say that for sure. Um, Kane, I'm doing okay. Not feeling too hot. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you start feeling better. Hopefully, you're not getting sick again, Kane. I know you just were pretty sick a couple months ago, I think, but well enough to listen to the stream. Well, I appreciate you being here. How are you gentlemen doing? I'm doing great, and Liam, I hope you're doing okay too. I hope you're doing
I'm
good.
couldn't be better. I just want to talk about
Awesome.
comics.
Awesome. I will say I love your background, your display there, and your just the whole bookcase. I love the way that looks.
Oh, thank you very much. It
That's a
was
lot. That's a lot there.
yeah, it's been built up over quite a while,
I
obviously.
imagine, yeah.
I will shout out it was inspired by Joaquin. If you know him,
Mm,
he does YouTube videos as well. And he has a bookshelf like this. There's a few other people who have them as well, but that's where I
okay.
first saw it. Where it's these ones are the skinny billies with the glass doors on them, and I just
Mhm.
think it looks real nice.
If I were to upgrade my bookshelves, right now I just have, like this one's, like, super cheap right over here, like, I think I got it from Walmart for, like or maybe Lowe's or something for, like, 30 bucks or something, but it's held up pretty good, and then this one I got from Lowe's too, and they're not I don't know, I don't like them that much, they're not matching, so I will eventually upgrade, um, to more uniformity, I guess, with my bookshelves, but yeah, your whole thing, your display there looks awesome. I would probably go with glass bookshelves as well. I like the way that looks, and I also like I wouldn't have to worry about, like, dust, you know? Um,
Yeah, that was a big thing for me too.
yeah, I always feel like I'm dusting these, and even when I do dust, I'm like, "Oh my god, they're still dirty," and my anxiety, like, skyrockets. I'm like, "Oh my the books are gonna get ruined," even though they probably won't. A little dust won't hurt them. Um Thank you for the well wishes. It's nothing too serious. Good to hear. Oh yeah, those bookcases are very sharp. They look so classy. Yes, they do. They do. Um, so what have you been reading lately?
It was mostly just the Crocodile Black that I read last night.
Okay.
And then next, I'm still deciding what I'm going to start. I think I'm ready for another omnibus. I
Nice.
was probably thinking about Justice League International Volume 3
Okay.
because I haven't. I read the first two volumes and then I stopped because Volume 3 wasn't out yet, and I never got back to it. Have you read that series at all?
I've not. Honestly, I besides Batman and a few other characters, I guess, for the DC universe, I haven't read too much. I need to dive deeper into that. Um So no, I've not read you said Justice League International?
Yeah, yeah.
Who's
They
that
have
by?
big red and white spines. It's Keith Giffen and putting me on the spot now. I'm forgetting. Hold on, let me look it up to make sure I'm giving the right
Okay,
information.
let's jump over here. Alex, hope you're doing well. Um, Justice League International 3 is amazing, has some of my favorite comics ever. Yeah, I did just have Alex on the show earlier in the week, and I think he did mention Justice League International, I believe. So I have heard a lot of good praise about it. I will say that.
Yeah, it's sorry, it's Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatteis, and the art's by Kevin Maguire as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, I highly recommend it. It is quite like a long series, but I do think it's one you could probably dip in and out of as well.
Okay, gotcha. Is that similar to, like, Justice League Unlimited where there's just a bunch of different DC characters now in the Justice League kinda? Or how's that
Not as
what's the
crazy as
synopsis of it, I guess?
so it's not as crazy as that.
Okay,
It's the first I think it's the main team book kind of after because you have Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then I think there's like the Legends event where there's a Justice League with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman in it. And then after that, the big names, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman aren't in it. And you've got a
okay,
team that consists of more B and C list characters. Um,
okay, yeah, okay.
and then eventually it splits up into Justice League America and Justice League Europe that are two
Hmm,
different teams and they have their own bases. But it also like one of the team, they have like Mr. Miracle in it. It's got a big focus on Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. It's seen as the more comedic era of Justice League,
mhm.
but I don't think it's terribly like lighthearted the whole way through. Like there's definitely serious moments in there.
Sure, okay.
Um, yeah, I think it's an underrated
Interesting.
series.
Maybe I'll have to, yeah, maybe I'll have to check that one out. I will say when it comes to DC and Marvel, I do like to read DC and Marvel comics digitally, at least first before I do make a purchase. So that may be one where I do dip my toes in digitally. Also, too, I did forget to mention before we really dive in here. Um, everyone in the chat, Beyond Comics Instagram is linked in the description below. So be sure to check that out. His Instagram is awesome. I absolutely love it. Dare I say it's one of my favorite Instagram pages on Instagram, to be completely honest with you. I think it's great. So link to that in the description below. I just wanted to quickly mention that before we dive even further in to the conversation here. Awesome. So Crocodile Black. Who was that by? Philip
Philip Kennedy Johnson.
What else?
So
What else has he written? I know I've heard that
he's
name a
mostly known
bunch.
for the Warworld saga, for Superman.
Okay.
He's also done the Felspire Chronicles, which was originally called The Last God.
Mm.
He's doing the current Hulk run, which is like a monster book with Marvel. He's done a few independent books as well. I think they're mostly through Boom. Last Sons of America, Warlords of Appalachia, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like I said, I've heard that name a bunch. I don't really know if I've ever read anything by him, to be honest. So I'll have to check out some of his works. Um so and I'm sure you know kind of how I like to do the interviews. Um Most questions here are comic book related, right? But I do have one that is not comic book related, which maybe you know already from watching other interviews. So we'll save that one for the last. Um, but like, tell me a little bit how you got started with content creation. Like, where did you start with Instagram? Did you do YouTube first? Tell me a little bit about that and what inspired you to kind of begin this journey.
So I have been part of the collecting community for a while in terms of like, watching the Omnibros streams and Omnidog and in the participating in like the Facebook group and things like that.
Okay.
And I just wanted to do something more, I guess, and just have a different place to put my thoughts instead of just like posting unsolicited reviews in the Facebook group all the time, where people will see it who don't necessarily want to see, I guess, if you're posting every
Sure.
single thing you read, or most things you read, if you have something to say. And my partner does Instagram herself. She posts like fashion and makeup content type stuff.
Okay.
And she's really, really good at it. And so that kind of inspired me to just give it a go. And so, yeah, I just started doing that. And I started taking awful pictures. If you scroll down, I've archived some of them, but some of them are just not great. But I just practiced and got better over time. And I think I take fairly decent photos now. And you try and keep in mind like what looks good on the feed itself when you go to the page as well. Yeah, it's not necessarily the best place to be posting reviews because it's a photo site, but it's a place you can show off your hauls, and there's a really nice community of people on there as well.
Yeah, I would definitely I would agree with you there. I do think there is a good comic book community on Instagram in particular. I haven't really I do have a Facebook, but I don't like Facebook. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. So I never have been in any of like the comic book groups or anything like that on there. But it's interesting. I feel like a lot of comic book YouTubers like OmniDog, that's kind of where he got his start into the community a little bit. And that, I think he said before that's where somebody like talked him into doing YouTube, essentially making a video or something. Um, so let me ask you, have you considered maybe doing YouTube more so? Because you do have a YouTube channel, correct? But you just don't,
Yeah,
it's not really
I
your
don't really
focus.
post on there.
Mhm.
I've thought about it. I'm a very socially anxious person. Like doing these
Sure.
streams, this is my third one now, so I'm getting a little bit more comfortable. But I'm not sure if it's obvious to the viewers, but I'm so nervous before we start these.
Oh, geez.
And so uh, I guess it's hard as well because I want to make sure that I would have something, uh, be able to articulate myself in a way that lives up to the level and the standard that's already set, I guess, in the community. Because I think there's so
Okay.
many people who make great reviews. Yourself,
Thank you.
Illuminati, Taylor Talks Comics, Bunkmaster B. Like, there's so many. Comics Are Dope. just so many, right?
Right.
And so maybe one day. At the moment, I'm still just posting on Instagram, and I don't have a huge amount of time for content creation as well. Like after work, which I work a full time job, and then also just wanting to actually spend my time reading as
Sure.
much as
Yeah.
possible. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's fair. Since doing YouTube, I've been doing it now consistently, really since November. I have posted before, but November, that's and or maybe it was end October actually. That's kind of when I started things up again and posting consistently. And ever since then, it's definitely taken my time away from reading, which is it's a little bittersweet. I do have to be a little bit more uh, conscious about what I choose to read next. Um, so I do understand that. If you did start YouTube, you definitely have a good setup there. You got a nice mic, you sound nice and clear, and you got a good backdrop. So you got some pieces in place already. Kane adds, honestly, be genuine with your reviews. Nothing's worse than giving a review that comes across as fake and shallow. I would agree with that. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. And I think
Absolutely.
that's one of the best things about some of the smaller YouTube channels as well is they're
Mhm.
so raw and real, I guess,
Right.
and you can definitely tell quite easily when someone's being genuine and when they're not. Um,
Sure.
like that's what drew me to like some of OmniDog's videos originally, because I think that's how I found OmniBros. Is like
Mhm.
his videos back in the day. It's just him, no editing. He's just talking his thoughts, and it's awesome. And now we have so many YouTubers in the comic space that do that, which is just great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Jess is an interesting case where I feel like even today, I mean, I think he almost has like 10,000 subs, or maybe he does even. But his videos are still very off the cuff, no pun intended there, but, it is just kinda him talking about his thoughts on the book, very little editing, and, I do respect that, and he does have a bit of charm to him in that sense, where he just wants to talk comics that he loves. Um, so, yeah, Jess is very genuine when it comes to his videos and his streams and whatnot. Jumping back over to you though, let me ask you, how did you oh wait, James says Jess has 9.5 53K, almost 10,000. Yeah. So he's close, very close. But jumping back over to you, how did you get like what sparked your love for comic books? Like what was the first comic that you really was like, "Oh wow, this is an awesome medium. I want to dive more into this." Um,
So I would say my start actually came from the DC animated shows when I was a kid.
okay.
Um, I didn't have anyone, and I still don't really know anyone in real life that is that into comics. But when I was growing up, I got introduced to the characters by watching, there's Batman the animated series, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited on TV, um, and that's kind of where my love for comics and DC started, I guess. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was like from there eventually, there is a comic book store in my town, thankfully, so I'm quite lucky for that, and it's a good one too. Um,
Nice.
and I just picked up some trade paperbacks here and there, collected a few single issue series, and then later on in life, when I came back to comics and found, Omnibus, and
Mhm.
these collections where you don't have to worry so much about reading orders, and you kind of just have everything in one nice
Right.
collection. I feel like that really kicked off my passion for comics.
Interesting. I'm curious to know what DC like animated shows were you watching that really kind of influenced you and introduced you to this world?
Anything that Bruce Timm was involved in, which is a lot, I would say a lot of the DC animated movies are really good. I feel
Okay.
like some of them are written off because they're like direct to video stuff that didn't have theatrical releases.
Okay.
Um, but especially the stuff like because they ended up doing eventually like a shared universe as well when the Avengers
Right.
movies started popping off in the MCU.
Yep.
But before that, like they did different art styles for all of them. They did them based on really good comics. So there's one based on Batman Year One. There's a Dark Knight Returns one, which is really good. Um, and I think the voice acting and stuff in them is really nice too. And then if people enjoy that and you go read the comic, then you usually get a few extra scenes that like you didn't get previously. You get to see the original art as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, the DC animated universe, it's something I haven't really delved into, unfortunately. I have tried a couple times, and not to say I didn't like them, but it was just like, oh, I just have other things I want to watch. Um, but I remember watching, I think it's Flashpoint Paradox. Is that what it's
Yeah.
called, or is it just Flashpoint? I remember watching that one, enjoying it. And I tried to watch Batman Long Halloween, and I don't know. I couldn't get into it. I don't know. I think it was because the art style was different from the comic, which I didn't like, but obviously that's kind of to be expected, I guess. They don't want to just copy, Tim Sale, right? They want to kind of do their own thing. And not to say the animation was bad or anything either. That just threw me off. I don't know. But
Yeah. I think they can try to emulate it, even if they're not going to be able to do it one to one, the art style.
mhm.
So if you look at the Dark Knight Returns one, that does have like a Frank Miller esque kind of
Okay.
animation, like art style to it. It's not the same, but
Right.
some of those elements you can still see in there.
Kind of has that
Um,
vibe a little bit.
yeah, but Long Halloween didn't have anything, and I agree. It suffers because so much of the Long Halloween is Tim Sale's art. You know.
Yeah, I would agree there, yeah. I do think that Jeff Loeb's writing is good, and I do I think the story, like the detective story of it, it's, like, a lot better than, like, Batman Hush or something, for example, in my opinion. Um, and I do hear the animated Long Halloween because it's part 1 and part 2, like, they're great. Like, I remember when they came out, it was, like, 100% Rotten Tomatoes, and, and the voice acting was pretty good too. I know, oh gosh, what's the guy's name? He plays in The Boys, Soldier Boy. Uh,
Jensen Ackles, I
yes,
want to
I'm
say.
pretty sure he voices Batman, I believe.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Um, I will say so that's part of the one of their newer shared universes that they did. Um,
Okay.
that was less successful and not. I don't know if they cut the budget or what, but to me, a lot of those movies are below the standard that they were releasing before. Um, but
Hmm.
I will recommend. There's Batman Under the Red Hood by Judd Winnick and
Mhm.
Doug Mankey.
Yeah,
So there's an animated movie that they did based on that, it's just Under the Red Hood, and Jensen Ackles voices Red Hood. Have you seen that one?
I have not seen that one.
That would be one of my probably in the top 3 animated movies I think they've done.
Okay,
That one's
wow.
terrific, so definitely check that out.
Alright, let me make a note of that, Under the Red Hood. Um, yeah, I haven't read the comic either, um, of Under the Red Hood, and I hear it's not that good. I That's kinda what I've heard. Um, have you read it? I'm curious to know, like, do you think it's better than the film? Not so good? What do you
I'm coming up to it in my, Batman reading order, but I'm not
Okay.
quite there yet, yeah. I've got they came out with a deluxe fairly recently, I imagine it's still in print as well,
Yeah, I
hopefully.
do. I think it was, like, last year or the year before. Yeah, it was fairly
Yeah.
recently, I remember. Um, yeah, maybe I'll have to try to give that the movie a watch instead of reading a comic, because I do hear, yeah, me and Mike were talking, I think last week about the animated, universe and whatnot. He's a big fan of it, and he mentioned Under the Red Hood, and he really enjoyed it. Kane also, agrees the DC animated universe has some banger movies, um, and the Tomorrowverse was lacking. I'm not sure what the Tomorrowverse is.
That's their shared universe that the Long Halloween is set in. Uh
Okay, gotcha.
there's only a very small handful of movies in that kinda era before they ended it. And now obviously we're in the James Gunn era, so, you ended up liking, Creature Commandos, right?
I did. I really enjoyed that show quite a bit, I will
Yeah,
say.
me too.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And they're doing a second season, so I'm really excited for that. It seems like James Gunn too. I know there was just a bunch of DC Universe news that came out. I don't know if there was some sort of con or something where it was all announced. Um, but I believe there is still going to be like animated movies. So, we still have that to look forward to as long, as well as other animated shows and whatnot. So I do like animation overall. So I'm glad that's not dying. Um, if anything, I think it's more popular than it's ever been. Like with Invincible, especially too. That show's huge.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. Did you watch the finale?
I did. I did. Tomorrow's all-in-one nerd show is about the entire season, but specifically the final episode.
Oh, awesome.
I will just say, without going into spoilers or going too heavy into it, I thought they brought it with the season finale. I will say, I think it's the best episode in the season. In my opinion, like the fight scene, it was so brutal. So they brought it. Um, the animation was pretty good throughout it too. It was definitely it kind of seemed like they were saving the animation for the final episode. Like they didn't have the budget for the animate for it to be as good throughout the other parts of the season. But I thought it was pretty good in the final
Yeah.
episode. What did you think?
I agree. I think the animation stepped up big time.
Yeah.
I will say that usually fight scenes I could not care less about from a like reading or watching perspective. I find them kind of dull usually, but I think the
Okay.
way that they write them in the Invincible comic and portray them in the show, it it keeps me invested and it's interesting. Just I don't know. I guess the way that they do it, where it's gory but they don't go over the top, and there's so many just great fight scenes in Invincible. Like
Yeah.
later on, have you read the comic?
I have. Yes. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed
So
the
like
comic.
later on in the series, when they're having their battles in space and they're talking about how they
Yeah.
have to hold their breath and things like that, it's just terrific.
It really is. Yeah. So I am very excited for the future of that show. I think, yeah, it's going to be some awesome television overall. And I think too in this episode, in the season finale, season 3 finale, I think it was some of the goriest scenes in the entire series so far. Like it was really brutal. I think it's the second best fight scene behind Omni Man and Invincible in season 1. I do. I think it was that good. Um, yeah, I thought it was great. Let's see, Alex, there are some good anime movies from the Tomorrowverse. Yeah. What is the Tomorrowverse? Did we go over that? I
So I guess originally there was DC's their movies, animated movies they did were mostly standalone. They had different
Mhm.
art styles and whatnot, and they weren't really consistent with continuity. They just picked a random comic and adapted it.
Sure.
Then they merged them with Flashpoint Paradox,
Right.
and they became what's known as the DCMU for DC Animated Universe.
Right, yep.
Um, and that spanned for a good few years. And there are some good ones and there are some not so good ones, but definitely towards the end, I feel like they were quite good. Um, then they did a reboot again, and then that era was called the Tomorrowverse. I think there's
Gotcha.
only maybe like 7-ish movies in that era. And then it ended with Crisis on Infinite Earths,
I
the
see,
animated
gotcha, and The Long
reboot
Halloween, you said that
was
is
part of that.
part of that, gotcha.
Yeah.
What other films are in that? I'm curious, do you know? Curious to know.
There's a Green Lantern one. I think it's called Green Lantern Beware My Power or something like
Okay.
that. There's a Superman one. Honestly, they're quite forgettable, so I don't even remember.
Gotcha, okay. Um, Alex says, "I like the finale, but it was underwhelming to me." I don't know, I would have to disagree with that. Not that you're wrong, obviously it's all subjective. It worked for me. I thought, like I said, I thought they brought it with the first half, especially of the season finale. That's all the conquest stuff. I thought it was very intense, super dark too at times, especially Conquest is a because I read the comics so quick. Like I think I read it like within a month, the entire series, even maybe even less, like 2 weeks, something like that. So a lot of it I don't really even remember, which is kind of nice. Watching the show, I'm like, oh yeah, I do kind of remember that. But so a lot of it's new to me, or it feels new rather. Um, yeah, I don't remember uh some of the stuff like Conquest says. Like I don't remember that being part of his character in the comic. I don't know if it is or not. Um, but super dark. What did you think of Jeffrey Dean Morgan voicing Conquest as well?
I think he did a good job. Like, he's a fun pick, but overall, I am a bit hesitant whenever they cast live action actors as voice actors. I think
Mm,
that they're very different skill sets,
yeah, for
and
sure.
like a lot of the time they can do a serviceable job, but then you wonder if a proper voice actor could have done a better one. But anyone can have a chance, and we've had great. I think like Steven Yeun does a great job as
Yeah, yeah.
Invincible, for example. Like the voice cast overall is really good. So
I will say I do agree with you there for sure. Um, Specifically about Jeffrey D. Morgan, though, it did not work for me that much. Like I don't know. It was just tough to imagine him like being this old, strong, buff dude to me. I don't know. Because in real life, he's kind of scrawny, even as Negan. Like he didn't bulk up or anything. He's kind of a scrawny dude. Um, so it was just tough to imagine him as Conquest. So I do kind of wish they went with a different voice actor for him. I think he might have been better as like Thrag. That's the main villain, I guess, right, of the show or the comics. Thrag, right? Is
yeah,
that his
he's
name?
he's the one who ends up uh, having that tie to Battle Beast, right? Without spoiling
I
anything.
believe so. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think I know the one.
Yeah. Um, I think it would have been better for him to voice him instead of like Conquest, personally.
I see
Um,
that.
but in some of the more intense scenes with Conquest, I thought it worked okay. Um, because some of the stuff he says is like super messed up. I was like, holy smokes, this is dark. So I don't know. I thought that it could have been someone else could have done it better for sure. Um, Alex adds the post credit scene was amazing. I'm so happy to see Kirkman do a Damien Dark blood arc. He had always wanted to, but never got around to it in the comic. Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious to see what that's setting up. Like, because they mentioned this person that they can summon essentially, and he's already on Earth. So I wonder who that is. I was thinking maybe it is Conquest, but I don't know. I don't know. And
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that either.
that's not in the comics at all, then, is it?
If it is, I don't remember it. I was the same
Yeah.
as you, where I binge read it. I had the 3 compendiums, and I read them very close to one another, and so it was a bit of a
Same.
blur. So yeah, when I'm watching the animated show, it's nice, and plus he's changing a few things as well,
Mhm.
which is kind of fun as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels fresh, even for
Mm.
the people who have read the comic, which I enjoy. So yeah, Invincible, I'm very excited to see season 4 and the rest of the seasons whenever that comes out. It's a great television, I will say. Um, so I'm curious too, are you like a DC, Marvel, indie guy? Like what do you really love? It seems like maybe more DC, but I'm curious. I'm curious
Yeah,
to know if you have like a definite answer.
I'm definitely I like DC the most. Those are
Okay.
the characters I grew up with. They're the characters that I resonate the most with. I just love the mythology of all of it. And I'm not. I know a lot of people, like you'd said before that you're a big Batman fan, and I feel
Mhm.
like he's a great gateway into the DC universe. But I
Sure.
think there's so many good characters that they have that just interest me more than Marvel. I do
Okay.
still love Marvel as well. I've read a bunch of Marvel, but I still feel like I've got a lot to catch up on the big events and things like that. But I've
Yeah.
read a lot of the main runs. I've read like all the Hickman stuff. Um, so actually, I'm meaning to ask you as well. I think you mentioned that you'd read the Black Cat run and didn't love it. Was that right?
By Jed McKay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
What didn't you like about it?
I just I did first off, I didn't really love the artwork by it, so I guess that's not necessarily on Jed McKay. Um, and I don't know, I thought it just wasn't what I was looking for, I will say, when I was going into it. Um, I think Black Cat is a cool character, but I don't know, it just did not do it for me at the end of the day. Um, yeah. Have you read that? Do you have a
I have read it, and I did really like it.
Okay.
I
I
think.
yeah,
Sorry, you go.
I will say it was a fun read. You know, it's kind of very lighthearted, although I guess towards the end it does get a little bit more serious, or the stakes feel a little bit higher. Um, but yeah, like I said, I don't know. There was a couple issues in there. Like I didn't really like the Iron Man, Black Cat stuff. That was like, I'm not crazy about it. Um, but I don't know. Maybe I should revisit it eventually. I still own the omnibus. So, but what did you like about it? I'm curious to know.
I liked the Iron Man Black Cat stuff. I guess it's just one of those like it's not like Watchmen or anything, but
Right.
I think it's just some silly comic book fun that
Yeah.
you can kind of binge pretty quickly. I thought the art was pretty decent, and I thought the storyline with like when they go into like her history with her mentor and things like that
Yeah.
was interesting. Yeah.
I will say I did like the first couple of issues, especially the one when they're in the uh Sanctum Sanctorum. Is that how you say
Mm,
it? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. I always butcher that for some reason. Um I really like that issue. I thought that was great. But yeah, some of the other stuff when they venture out more, I was like, I like the part when Wolverine shows up. I thought that was pretty cool. Um, but I thought the ending to me, it just felt it just fell short, I guess. But it is an overall just a fun comic at the end of the day. Like you said, it's not like Watchmen. It's not a dense read by any means. It's just kind of have fun with it. So I do like it in some regard. I don't hate it or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Alex says I didn't enjoy the first Black Cat at all. The later ongoing was better, but not great. Okay, interesting. Um, so you're more of a DC guy over a Marvel or I guess indie. Um, what what DC character do you resonate the most with, if there is one, or maybe a few?
Um, I'm a big fan of Swamp Thing. I've talked about before.
Ooh,
So he's up there. But honestly, I love most of the whole DC universe. Like,
okay,
um, I would say the only parts like I haven't read a lot of Doom Patrol. I've read Gerard Way's run.
yeah,
That I thought I would love it, but it's just I think them
not for
and those
you.
characters aren't for me. I
Okay,
haven't read the Grant Morrison run though, which I know is like the definitive Doom
right.
Patrol. But yeah, I've been reading a lot of Wonder Woman lately. I love Wonder Woman, and Superman as well is right up there with Batman for me. Um, yeah, and I do read independent. I don't read
Mhm.
nearly enough. I feel like I've got a lot to catch up on the big two before I have more time to read indie. I guess with characters
Okay.
that I'm not invested in. But I've been reading. Have you read much of Jeff Johns and the unnamed universe stuff at Ghost Machine?
Not yet. I've yet to really dive into that. I really want to get the Geiger hardcover and then also the Junkyard Joe hardcover. And some of the other Ghost Machine characters they have seem really cool to me. Um, especially, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his name now. The guy who's like a revolutionary soldier.
Red
Um,
Coat, I
Yes,
think.
Redco. That seems
Yeah.
I like history a lot, so that seems awesome, especially like American history. Hyde Street seems really interesting. So,
Mm.
yeah, I do just need to pick up Geiger and then also Junkyard Joe, and then I I imagine the other characters will get hardcovers once there are enough materials out. So I'm debating whether or not getting those or maybe just buying the trade paperbacks until one is released. Um, but have you read Jeff John, that universe?
I have. I've
Yeah,
read
nice.
just what's in the hardcovers so far.
Okay,
So Geiger and Junkyard Joe, and
nice.
both are really really good comics. I like that they describe them as at least Geiger as superhero adjacent. So
Okay,
if you're a little bit jaded on comic book heroes and you want something a little bit different, I think it's less tropey and
mhm,
feels more fresh. Um,
awesome.
and
Okay,
yeah, the writing and the art is just like incredible on both. And
sweet.
so really looking forward to checking out Redcoat and Rook Exodus as well.
Okay.
That's got art by Jason Fabok.
I don't know if I've heard of
about
that one actually.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I've read the first issue, and it was great. It's
Okay.
kind of like a
What
sci-fi-ish kind
what
of
was it
story.
called?
Rook Exodus.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's getting a hardcover, I think, later this year.
Okay, awesome.
Mm.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope Redcoat gets a hardcover soon. I think there's might be enough out. I think there's like 2 trade paperbacks out. Granted, I don't know how much material is collected in the deluxe editions, but I've heard nothing but good stuff about all of them so far. So I am excited to finally dive into that eventually. So I'm also curious to know if there was a DC run or DC book that you'd recommend. What DC book would you recommend to a reader who wants to get into the universe as a whole? Where do you think is a good jumping on point?
Is there a certain character that you're interested in, or like genre?
Um,
Like, do you prefer fantasy or sci-fi or um
hmm. I could go either way with it, to be honest. I guess I'm open to anything. Um, what about like a Justice League book or something? Like you mentioned Justice League International. I hear that's really good. Maybe something like that.
Justice League? Just thinking. I think Jeff Johns' New 52 run would probably be a great place
Okay.
to start, because it's modern, so it's nice and easy to read. It's got Jim Lee art, so it
Nice.
appeals to a lot of people. And later on in the run, he starts pulling from some of Jack Kirby's Fourth World stuff,
Okay.
which is just great. So I'd probably recommend there. And then you don't have to worry about really any continuity issues, things like that, because it's right after the New 52 reboot.
Right. So it's all new. Awesome.
Yeah.
I have heard good stuff about that run as well. Now, Jim Lee, how many issues does he do of that? Do you know?
I don't remember. I feel like he does quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love
I'd have
Jim
to-
Lee's artwork, I will say. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Jeff Johns Justice League, New 52. Sweet. Alex says Hyde Street and Redcoat are my favorites. Awesome. That's great to hear. I'm excited to read both those. Also too, speaking a little bit about indie, I love indie books. I guess I don't know. I was talking with Taylor Talks Comics about like the definition of an indie comic and how like Image and whatnot, it doesn't really fall under indie. I still call them indie books, whatever. What's been like some of your favorite indie books that you have read so far?
I would say, have you read or heard of The Killer by Jackamon and Matz?
I have heard of that. Yeah, they made a movie adaptation, correct?
They did, yeah. The comic, it was. I feel like it might have been one of the first independent comics I read back in the day.
Okay.
That is incredible. I think the movie was decent, but the
Sure.
comic is awesome, and it's one of those stories that just works great in the medium.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I would say that the kind of first arcs are the best. Later on, it's still really good. But yeah, that's one.
Cool.
And then also, I will say last year, I know everyone talks about it on your channel. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by
I
Zoe
love it.
Thorogood.
I love it.
Incredible. I
Incredible.
don't read a lot of like autobiographies or anything like
Mhm.
that, but it was recommended by so many people, and it's like just an achievement in the comics medium. It's amazing. And if anyone
I
in the
would
chat hasn't read it before, go do it.
I would completely agree with that. I think that's one of my favorite comics ever. It really is. I love Zoe Thorogood as a writer and an artist. Yeah. So that's a great pick. Have you read her other work? She's done a few other things, but the other big one is The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott. Have you checked that one out yet?
I haven't, but I want to.
I would
Yeah.
recommend that one, especially if you like It's Lonely. I think that's a really good read too. It's shorter too, so it's nothing super long. And it feels a little bit almost autobiographical in a sense, because it's all about a writer as she goes blind, right? Obviously, Zoe Thorogood hasn't gone blind. Hopefully, she never does. But there is definitely some autobiographical elements in there if you know anything about Zoe, and you do a little bit from It's Lonely. So I would definitely recommend that one for sure. So what's your favorite book in your collection?
My favorite book, I really love the Absolute Swamp Things, the Alan Moore volumes.
Okay.
They're really nicely designed. They smell incredible, which is a weird thing to say, but
Interesting.
yeah, I really like those. But honestly, now that it's got recency bias, but probably Mr. Miracle as well.
Okay,
It's
awesome.
just one of my favorite stories of all time. So very glad to have that.
Sweet. Okay, so a couple absolutes there. Nice. I isn't there a controversy around the Absolute Swamp Things by Alan Moore, like the recoloring or something? Or is that in a different edition of
There,
that run?
there is. So when they put out the Absolute Swamp Thing, the Alan Moore volumes, they made the decision to recolor it. And I think the issue with the recoloring is that they didn't try to maintain the original vibe that the coloring had from
Okay,
the OG run.
sure.
So it's quite different. But I will say that the new colors are beautiful, but they're just not. There's not as much atmosphere. Like
Mm,
there's a few famous panels that I think of straight away where it's got like a more of a pink sky, and the way the color that they change it to, it's more realistic colors, I guess. But
sure. Okay.
I guess for someone who probably reads more modern comics, I think it might be more familiar to them, I guess.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but I like both the colors though. So
Okay, so that doesn't bother you then. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that they won't get the absolutes because of that.
mm.
Um, so that's interesting that yeah, that I I'm I wonder why they made that decision ultimately to recolor. Like why I don't know. That's it. It just seems strange. Like why would you mess with the original work at all like that? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I guess we have different technology now for coloring than we did
Mhm.
back then, and so you can do different things with depth and that probably were more difficult or impossible to do when the book originally came out. But I think that they should have at least tried to keep the same, the decisions that the colorist originally made. Um, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Um, okay, yeah. So Swamp Thing, the absolute Swamp Things by Alan Moore and then Mr. Miracle. Okay. Yeah, I when I first got into comics, Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, that was one of the series I read first. So I haven't revisited it in a few years. So I'm tempted to go back. I will say I didn't love it. Like I think I would need to revisit it more in a critical sense, I think. Um And now that I'm more familiar with the comics medium as a whole, maybe I'll appreciate certain aspects that I didn't really when I first read it. So yeah, that's one I don't know. I'll have to go back and check out. I will say, like Watchmen, I love Watchmen. Other Alan Moore's works, like V for Vendetta, I only read like half of it. I did not really enjoy that story that much. I just thought it was kind of bland. Not bland, that's the wrong word, but it just I don't know. I just didn't dig it. So I'm
Have you
curious
read
to know.
Promethea?
I've not read that. Yeah, I've not checked that one out. Um, Promethea. Let me jot that one down. And then also he did oh gosh, what is it? Did he do Animal Man at one point?
I'm not sure. I've only read the Grant Morrison run.
Yeah, no, maybe I'm thinking of another character. Oh, it starts with an M. It's like Mr. Something, I think.
Oh, yeah, I know the one. I think it's Miracle Man.
Miracle Man. That's what it
Yeah,
is. Yes. I was thinking of Mr. Miracle, but that wasn't it. I knew that. Um, have you read that one, Miracle Man? Because
I
I hear
haven't.
great
No.
things about that. Okay. Yeah, that's one I definitely want to check out at some point. But yeah, Alan Moore, it seems to be kind of hit or miss for me. I think I don't know. I don't know. Alex says sometimes modernizing coloring is needed, like with Simon's Thor run. The original colors were inconsistent and generally bad. Interesting. Okay. I don't know. Hmm. I feel like with Swamp Thing though, people enjoyed the coloring. Like that was it worked. I don't know if anyone would consider it bad necessarily. But anyhow, what what's a comic that impacted you the most? Whether it be emotionally, spiritually, whatever.
I'd probably have to say, again, I know it's spoken about so much. I feel like it's a meme at this point on your channel, but it's
That's all right.
lonely. It's lonely at
Okay.
the center of the earth. I think that anyone who's um, suffered from or experienced depression and anxiety, I think that the way she writes about it is so real, and it's definitely one that like got me very choked up,
Mhm.
especially towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that book can be intense at times. It's so well crafted because it can be it's so intense at times when it's dealing with certain subject matter, but then the next page will make you laugh. Like it's the way it's crafted and the way it reads is just so genius in a lot of ways, where it really does. It is this emotional roller coaster that you're on, but it's such a great read. And I think that book in particular, it's it will resonate with you differently depending on your life experiences, you know? So,
for sure.
like I said this before, and I think you're right. I think it's kind of almost becoming a meme on the channel a little bit about Zoe Thorogood, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with. I can gush about Zoe Thorogood all day long.
Yeah.
Um, I'm so excited for her future work. I think she's teased that there will be like a sequel to It's Lonely and then another one. Like it will be like a trilogy. And I don't know if that's confirmed or whatnot. I follow her on Instagram and she's been posting a bit more. It seems like a separate project, but I've said this before. She's one of those creators that if her name's on it, I'm checking it out. No doubt about that. Um, so I think that's a great answer. I think yeah, it's lonely at the center of the earth. I love that story. I want to do a video on that actually, but part of me does, part of me doesn't. I'm worried that if I'm going to take more of a critical look at it, it will like not ruin it, but it will be a different experience. So I almost don't want to do a video on it, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I mean, you can do a video as instead of a review, as more of a recommendation and an
Mm,
overview about, maybe some people who have heard about it but aren't quite sure like what it's about.
sure.
Um, mm,
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Doing a more of a recommendation overview of it. I haven't really done that on my channel yet, so that's a good idea. Um, what's a comic that you would like to be adapted into a movie or TV show and why?
it's a great question. I will say that I am not the hugest fan of adapting comics all the time because
Sure, yeah.
I feel like I have an Alan Moore thought process with it where I don't want comics to be this stepping stone to someone's Netflix movie, right?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
comic should be the like if it's put out as a comic, it should be that is the story, that is what it is, and anything else is like adapting it is kind of like supplementary to that. And that's
Mm,
not to say that there aren't good comic book adaptations because there definitely are, but I prefer when the movies take inspiration from stories, but don't necessarily adapt it one to one. You know what I mean?
okay.
Um, I will say I'm pretty excited for the Supergirl movie that they're doing,
Me too,
um,
yeah.
because they're going to make some changes to it. So number one, it has to fit. They're going to tell that story fitting in with the rest of the DCU at large that James Gunn's setting up,
Right.
and also Lobo's in it, which normally I'd roll my eyes and say, well, they're just putting Lobo in it because it'll sell tickets or whatever. But I think that Tom King mentioned that he originally had planned to have Lobo in the book, but didn't make it in for whatever reason.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting, okay.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how they adapt that and how they put it in there. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one I'm very much excited for.
Mm.
That's coming out, I think in uh I think it's June or July of 2026. So we have about a year and a half or so. But that's one I'm super excited for. And I think that will make for a good adaptation. I'm sure I think they said that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is like the main inspiration for that film.
Mm.
But I'm sure they'll take their own liberties and kind of make its own thing, kind of like what you were saying, where they're inspired by it. There's definitely homages and influences from the comic, but ultimately it's kind of its own story. And I think that's when adaptations are at their best. Um, not not to say that a direct adaptation of something couldn't work. Like I think Zack Snyder's Watchmen is very uh, accurate to the comic in a lot of ways and very faithful. And I do like Zack Snyder's Watchmen as well. So kind of speaking of Alan Moore and whatnot, I do think that works ultimately. Um, so yeah, great pick. I will say. Also, too, we're at an hour of the show, so I do want to be conscious of your time. I don't want to take too much of your time up if you are on a time limit.
I'm totally fine as long as
Awesome.
you want to go.
All right, man. Um, Next question I have for you is the one that is not comic book related or anything like this. Um, and it is, do you have a paranormal experience that you would like to share with us?
I wish that I could tell you an incredible story about like a sighting of a cryptid or something, but unfortunately, I don't. I will
Okay.
say that I love looking at the history of some of these supernatural things when people thought they were real. So
Okay,
people used to
interesting.
think vampires were real and like how they managed that and
Right.
what people did when they were superstitious. I find all that super interesting. Um, like same with like chupacabras, how
Mm,
people saw what they thought were chupacabras, but turns out it was actually just I think that it was wolves with mange or something, or coyotes with mange
mm.
that made them look different. And so I find all of that interesting. But yeah, unfortunately, I've not seen anything as of yet.
Well, that's a bummer. But you are not the only one. I think every guest I've asked so far, uh, they had a similar answer where they're like, "No, not really. We don't." Um, so maybe it's just not a great question. Maybe I should try to figure out a better question because, um, yeah, no one has had a good paranormal experience yet to share. I
I
think
think
one of these days on one of these streams, I will get someone who has this incredible paranormal experience. Um, but that's interesting that like the history behind I guess the lore of the character in some sense, right? Of like where they originate. Why do vampires why do they exist in this mythos? Like what are they? And then you're right. I mean, there are people uh who used to believe that in vampires and whatnot. Um so as a history buff, I do appreciate that side of history too. Um Kane says 24-hour stream. Here we go. What do you think? You want to do a 24-hour stream?
uh, maybe we'll see how we go.
Yeah, I don't think I have that in me, to be honest. Maybe I bet Jess would. He's that dude's an animal when it comes to streaming. He does like 3-hour streams on the regular. I'm like, that's too much for me. I'm sorry, I can't. 3 hours is a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Um,
I agree.
but you were on OmniDog's stream recently, right? Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, I've been on a couple, and they've gone for a decent while. I think the last one we got on was a couple hours.
Okay, wow. Unfortunately, I missed both those, and I've yet to watch it on the replay yet. Um, but how was that? How was what did you guys talk about? I'm curious to know.
It was great. So the first one we spoke about Hellblazer: Dead in America,
Hmm.
um, and that one I will say I haven't rewatched either of them because I don't think I can. I don't know if you rewatch your own streams, but I don't think
Yeah.
I could bring myself to watch myself for that long. Um,
Okay, that's fair.
it was a lot of fun. I will say I was super nervous and I tripped over my words a lot, and I did not feel like I was very articulate. Um,
Mm.
but it was my first stream, so I did my best. And then I had another. Yeah, James just said you didn't talk about comics, you talked about donuts. Yeah, I will say that's probably the majority of the streams, both of them.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then we did another stream with my fellow Kiwis. So Crisis, if you know them,
Yep.
and Batmanther as well. We did a,
Oh,
a
awesome.
Kiwi takeover.
Awesome. Nice. So you're from New Zealand, right? Not Australia?
Correct. Yes.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Interesting. And I know the picture you sent me for the thumbnail, you were at the Schreier. So that's
Yes,
pretty
that's
cool.
correct. Yeah, yeah. At the Hobbiton movie set. I live fairly close there. It's like less than an hour's drive, I think.
No
Um,
kidding.
yeah, we actually my partner and I got to go. They had a premiere for The War of the Rohirrim. It was like the new
Yep.
Lord of the Rings animated movie that came out.
Yep.
So we got to go to the premiere of that there, and it was awesome. Like Peter Jackson was there.
No
Um,
kidding.
we met Andy Serkis, which is insane. Yeah, and he was
That's
super
awesome.
nice as well. So yeah, it was an awesome time.
That's sweet. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. You only live like a less than an hour away from that place.
Yeah, I've been a few times.
That's awesome. As a Lord of the Rings fan, it's like one of my dreams to go there someday.
Ah, you'll
Um,
have to come visit, man.
yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
pick you up from the airport.
What's that?
I'll pick you up from the airport.
Perfect. There we go. I got a ride already. I appreciate that. Um, isn't there also too in New Zealand like a big hike that you can do that like you visit all the sets where they filmed and everything like that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure of any like official like hikes
Okay.
that people would take you on. I wouldn't be surprised if there are. There definitely are like people go on hikes to the filming locations. Um, I think I saw recently someone was hiking from Hobbiton to where the filming location was around Mount Doom. And
Okay.
they were
Wow.
they were hiking it dressed as hobbits. So yeah, there's definitely a bunch of filming locations around the place that people can go to.
That's that would be sweet to go visit all those filming locations and whatnot. I have to ask you too, how was the new animated film, The War of whatever it's called? I can't remember. I don't know how to say it either. But how was that? I hear it was pretty good.
I loved it. I think it was really interesting that they chose like anime as like a Japanese anime style for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good standalone, like you don't necessarily have to have watched all of the Lord of the Rings and all of the Hobbit movies. Like you can kind of just watch that. Um,
Right.
and I think it's got some really great set pieces and action moments in it as well. It's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I think it's on HBO Max now. I could be wrong. Um, and the voice acting too, the voice cast seemed like it was stacked. So I'll have to check that out. Now, is it set before or after the events of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit?
Um, I think it's set before, but
Okay.
after the Rings of Power TV show. This is from memory. I haven't watched it since it came out.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's before The Hobbit, but yeah, after Rings of Power.
Have you watched The Rings of Power? Because I have not yet, and I don't know if I want to be
So
honest.
I have.
Okay.
I know that people. I will say I'm not like a super purist. Like I got into Lord of the Rings more recently,
Okay.
over the past few years than when I was younger.
Mhm.
Um, I know that a lot of people were talking poor about it and saying it wasn't very good. I absolutely loved it.
Interesting. Okay.
It's like one of my favorite parts of the Lord of the Rings. Like I'm probably going to get slammed by some Lord of the Rings super fan in the comments, but
Who
I
cares?
really really enjoy it. There's like it's got problems, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, season two's wrapped up, and yeah, it's great.
Uh, I'll have to try to check it out eventually. Let me jot that down too because I'll forget. Yeah, I hear mixed things about it. I heard the first season was okay, and then I hear a lot of people bashing it online, which I feel like across the board when it comes to like these movies and TV shows and even like people have to like chill a little bit. Like it's just a TV show. All right, let's not get too heated over it. Um, and it's funny you mentioned kind of liking something that's um uh the majority of people may not like because that's I've talked to a lot of people and I talked to someone yesterday and he may be in the chats, but I won't mention his name. He talked about how he liked the Green Lantern film. I really love that, and I haven't seen that since it came out, so I don't have an opinion on it. Um, but I think it's awesome when someone like likes something that maybe I don't or someone else thought like fantastic that you enjoyed that. Um, so with your recommendation, I may have to check it out with your review. Yeah, we'll have to see. How is the how is it like shot? Like how's the production level of it? Does it feel cinematic when you watch it? Like the trilogy?
I would say so, yes.
Okay.
Especially in season 2, there are some big there's like a big war scene, and that is like I don't know, it must have had a huge budget. I think it looks great. There's like
Okay.
a troll especially that like
Uh-huh.
the design and the CGI for it is like I think the best troll that we've seen in Lord of the Rings media. It looks great.
No kidding. Wow.
Mm.
All right. I'm gonna I'm gonna have to check it out. I will. One of these days. I got so much to watch, I feel like. But Bunkmaster B's here. Dang, Labruski's live with Beyond Comics, and I'm only just finding out now. I know, but Bunkmaster B, where you been? I'm glad you're here, though. It's always great to see you in the chat. I will say.
Yeah, what's up, Bunk?
Um, so who's your favorite writer? Who's your favorite comic book writer?
I will say it's hard because a lot of writers you will read something from them that's like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite writer. That they
Sure.
have the Midas touch and nothing they can do is wrong. And then you'll read something else by the same writer, and then it's not.
Right.
I would say the writer that is the most consistent for me and is probably my favorite right now is Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Okay.
Um, I don't necessarily think everything he's written is a 10 out of 10, but I
Mhm.
think that he writes what I want to read, just period. Like the way, especially obviously World Saga and what he's done in Green Lantern. It's just if I could write myself, I would want to be writing stories like that. Um, I think he's really good.
Awesome. All right. See, he's one I'm gonna have to read some of his work and whatnot. What would you recommend by him if I were to dive in?
I
Where's a good place to start, you think?
So you're into fantasy, right?
It's not my favorite genre. I do like it. Some fantasy I don't like though. Like Lord of the Rings, I love. But some other fantasy I'm like, about. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm always willing to give it a shot, I will say.
If you like Lord of the Rings, I would definitely say to check out the Felspire Chronicles. Um,
Okay.
it's got art by Riccardo Federici, who is
Mm,
like, I don't know how he's not talked about more. He is like one of the best artists, I think, in comics today.
okay.
And it suits that book so much. And yeah, it's like a big epic fantasy thing. And Philip Kennedy Johnson did a whole bunch of world building for that book as well. There's a huge back matter section in the hardcover, which hopefully is still in print. And you like the dust cover folds out to a big map.
Oh
So
my
it's a standard
gosh.
size hardcover, but it's still wonderful. Definitely, definitely would recommend picking that up.
It,
Um, if you
w-
want something more superhero related, I'd definitely say the Superman run. So Warworld Saga, which is in a compendium and is getting an omnibus soon as well.
awesome. All right, let me jot that down. What was the first series you talked about? What was it called?
So it's called The Felspire Chronicles. Hold on, let me grab the book.
Yeah. Let me jump to the comments here. Bunk says Philip Kennedy Johnson's crime anthology series Smoketown is great and scratches that same criminal itch. You are speaking my language, Bunk. I will say that seems incredible. I'm
I
rereading Criminal right now, actually. Let me.
Bunk, that's like one of the only books by PKJ I haven't read yet. Because I think the trade was meant to be reprinted and then just disappeared from the catalog. So I don't know what the situation is. But I spoke about earlier.
Oh, The Last God, the Fellspire Chronicles. Thank you, James. I think OmniDog did a video on it actually, or talked about it in a video, and I watched and I said that seems interesting.
Yeah, they Jess and the Minister of Comics did an interview with Philip Kennedy Johnson as well.
No
I
kidding.
definitely
Wow.
recommend watching that. But this is it here.
All right, let me highlight you.
So it's big, like epic fantasy style.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can show you some of the art. Oh, here we go. Look
Let's
at this
see
insane stuff.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah. Like Riccardo Federici is like easily one of my favorite artists of all time. I think he just does a great job in that. So highly recommend that. And then just Bunk, talking about Smoketown, we spoke earlier about this book as well, Crocodile Black. This just came out from Philip Kennedy Johnson as well, and is another like crime book that I'd recommend.
Who publishes Crocodile Black? By the way,
I think it was Boom. Yeah, Boom Studios.
Boom Studios. I like Boom Studios a lot. All right. So the Fellspire Chronicles.
Yeah, it was originally called The Last God, the Fellspire Chronicles, and then I think they had legal action taken against them because of some copyright issue, and so now they reprinted it and just branded it as the Fellspire Chronicles Book 1. So hopefully one day we get more.
Is it a completed story in that deluxe, or does it kind of?
I will say that it is a complete story, but he could definitely do more.
Do more.
And
gotcha.
he said that he wants to. He said that if he ever signs a exclusive with DC, that he'll push for it.
Sweet.
So hopefully one day.
All right. So I definitely have to check out some Philip Kennedy Johnson here. Let me just jot that down so I don't forget. And that's still in print, that one, right? That deluxe there?
It's just a standard hardcover, but
okay.
I will let me have a look.
Hopefully awesome. It is. Alex says that's awesome. Damn, that is awesome. James adds, the only problems I had with Fellspire Chronicles is the colors in the hardcover look faded. It looked better on digital. Maybe I'll read it on digital actually too if it's not in print.
It looks like there's a trade paperback that's in print. I have heard that about the colors. I haven't read it digitally yet. I think that the muted colors look nice to me, but I can see how if they were more vibrant that it would pop. But hopefully we get an absolute of this one day because that would be awesome.
Gotcha. Bunk says I've never seen the Smoketown trade, but the single shouldn't be hard to find. Maybe that's one I'll read digitally too, because if it's like Criminal, I would absolutely love it. So let me yeah, Smoketown. Interesting. Bunk says didn't finish Crocodile Black, but read the first few issues and enjoyed it. Croc Black gets the Beyond seal of approval. I believe so, right?
I'd say so. Yeah, I think the
nice.
If I'm not sure how far you got into it with those issues, but I think that the way that Som does the art for the hallucinations is really cool and interesting and works really well in a comic book format. I feel like he's maybe still getting his footing for crime stories when I read this. Like it feels a little tropey, but I would like to see him do more. And I will say it resonated with me emotionally as well.
Awesome. Love to hear that. I will absolutely add that to my soon to purchase list for sure. I want to jump back up to a comic here from Alex. What is the comic scene like in New Zealand?
It's a great question. There are a few comic stores. I would say there's 3 main ones that we have. There's maybe 4, I guess. I've only been to, I think, 3 of them though. They're kind of spread out across the country. So we do have, we can get singles. Buying collected editions becomes an issue if you're talking about the big books, because we obviously, by the time you ship books all the way to a small island across the other side of the world, things get expensive. So like
Right.
we see omnibus be listed, if you're buying them from a local comic store, 300 New Zealand dollars easily
Oh
sometimes.
my gosh.
So well over what the cover price is. So even more
Yeah.
than that. Thankfully, some of the places overseas have, like, in stock trades, have really affordable FedEx shipping where it works out pretty good. So that's usually where I get my books. But yeah, we've got a few Facebook groups as well in New Zealand that have like a few thousand people in there. But
Wow.
yeah.
So it can be tougher to get some collected editions and whatnot, but single issues are a bit easier to get your hands on.
Yeah, for sure. But
Gotcha.
again, just the cost of single issues these days as well, is expensive. We're paying
Sure.
over 10 New Zealand dollars here now for a lot of single issues. So collected editions is a bit more affordable.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, I always find it fascinating to learn about the comic scene in other countries outside of the US. I don't know why. I just think it's interesting. Um, so who's your favorite excuse me. Who's your favorite artist?
Like I said before, I think Riccardo Federici would be up there.
Mhm.
And it kind of changes every now and again depending on what I'm reading.
Sure.
I really enjoy Daniel Sampour's art. He's been
Okay.
on the current. He did some of Philip Kennedy Johnson's Superman run actually, and he also is doing Tom King's Wonder Woman run at the moment.
Oh, nice.
Uh, yeah, his art is incredible. What about you?
Um, Probably Zoe Thorogood. I really like Daniel Warren Johnson. Sean Phillips. I really like probably Jim Lee. I also really like probably those. I'm sure there's a couple others I'm forgetting about, but those are always yeah, I guess where I lean. I do really like Dave Gibbons' artwork in Watchmen, also too. Um, so yeah, those are kind of my favorite artists, I guess. Um, let's see here. Um, so what's your and I don't think we've talked about this, but correct me if I'm wrong. What's like your personal favorite comic ever? Whether it be like maybe even like a guilty pleasure, I guess. Like what's something that you just love to reread over and over again?
We've talked about it a little bit already, but Mr. Miracle, I would say,
Yeah.
like, I mean, a lot of people know me from my profile picture, which if you haven't read Mr. Miracle, the profile picture I use on Instagram and my avatar that shows up in the chat is Darkseid eating a carrot. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to say anything else about that scene in case anyone else hasn't read it, but it's just ridiculous. Actually, and now we're talking about it. Mitch Gerrards is also an incredible artist as well. I really
Okay.
like
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
work,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and he just like doesn't miss. But yeah, so I would say Mr. Miracle in terms of like shorter run. In
Sure.
terms of longer runs, I would say Alan Moore Swamp Thing, the Warworld Saga. I think Ronin by Frank Miller is probably up there. I
Ooh,
really like Frank Miller. I'm a big Frank Miller fan. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Frank Miller. That's I haven't read. I mean, I've read kind of the staples, I guess, his famous works, but I haven't read Ronin yet. And that was inspired by, I think, a manga called The Wolf and Lone Cub. I think that's what it is. Have you heard of that?
Lone Wolf and Cub. Yeah.
That's what it
I
is.
haven't
Yeah.
read it, but I have heard the same thing.
Do you own the Absolute Ronin?
I do. I was
Oh
so
wow.
stoked. I actually saw it come up in a New Zealand group for an affordable price, the Absolute secondhand, and so I grabbed that, and I was very, very happy to find that one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What absolutes do you own? I'm curious about that.
I try to limit myself to like one per character or team ish.
Sure.
So I've got All Star Superman, which is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Superman stories.
Okay.
Dark Knight Returns. I've got the Fourth World Absolutes,
Nice.
which Jack Kirby's art in that huge size just looks so good. And then I've got now Mr. Miracle, Ronin, and then I've got the 3 Alan Moore Swamp Things and the Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing Absolute as well.
Gotcha. Awesome. 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 I think that's really all I have for questions. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. So before we kind of wrap up, is there anything you want to say to the audience? Anything you want to promote, I guess?
Not really. I guess just feel free to check out my Instagram. I try to
Yep.
post there at least a couple times a week with kind of what I'm reading at the moment. And other than that, yeah, I'll just be in the chat talking comics.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I would absolutely love to have you back on eventually, whether it be for another off the cuff or an all-in-one nerd show as well. We would love to have you on that. But yes, thank you again. Everyone, please like and subscribe if you have not done so already. And be sure to check out Beyond Comics Instagram. Like I said, I think it's one of my favorite Instagram profiles out there. So gets the Labruski stamp of approval for sure. And yeah, we will catch you in the next all-in-one interview. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.